2 minutes. One minute. $15. Is that doing that? Shoot. Hey everybody, Dragon Movie Guy here. Sorry about that for just a second there. Welcome to my April movie ranking review extravaganza. I can't believe that the month of April has come and gone now, and we are into the month of May. So, that is the perfect excuse to look backwards at the month of April and look at what our favorite movies were for the month of April, some of the not-so-favorite movies for the month of April, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. My guest today to talk about his movies, his favorite April movies as well, is a friend of the channel. He actually had me on his podcast a year ago, and it's taken me a year to return the favor and bring him on as my guest. This is a man who is on he's on Instagram, he is on YouTube, he is on the TikTok, as the kids say, or as everyone but the kids say, the TikTok. You can find him on his YouTube channel, Pierce Productions. It's been a year. I'm glad to have him back on my channel now, or back on my channel for the first time. As I stumble across my words, please welcome to the channel, Trace Pierce of Pierce Productions. Welcome, Trace. Welcome to Dragon Movie Guy.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Definitely was looking forward to doing this. The second you reached out, I pretty much dropped my phone. I was super excited. I'm glad that I was able to make it on this for you, and I'm just ready to talk about movies, the good and the bad, like you did say. But I think overall, it's more good.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're keeping it really streamlined today. We're doing a top 5 for each of us, and we're going to start with we're going to do 2 at a time, 2 each, going back and forth, doing our 5 and 4, then our 5 and 4, and then our 3 and 2, and then doing our build up to our countdown to our number 1 movies for the month of April. Let's just jump right into it, and we're going to have you lead off first and start off with your number 5 movie for the month of April, and that is Ghosted.
So when I was putting together the list, Ghosted is not a good movie by far. It should be on a top 5 worst list, not top 5 of April, because that would assume that it was one of the best. What was embarrassing is when I was going through all the movies in April, there was a lot that I didn't get a chance to see. So I was like, crap, like, I guess I got to put it on there, but I got to put it last. Ghosted, unfortunately, is not the movie that I thought it was going to be. I thought that the premise and having Anna de Armas and I almost said Chris Pratt, Captain America, Chris Evans, and they're teaming up again for their third venture together, counting Knives Out and The Gray Man. So this is their third time working together within, I'm going to say, like a 5-year period. I love both those actors, but this movie was just doomed from the start with the writing and the jokes. And I don't know how far in depth you want to go into it, but I mean, this was just for Apple TV, like they've been pumping out a bunch of really good stuff. So this is one that I think that they maybe had their head in their hands a little bit and said, okay, let's get it out, and hopefully everyone forgets about it, because I know I did.
Now, don't worry about spoilers, because I figure if anyone was watching a month after the movie's released, and they're watching my channel on top of that, they probably don't care about spoilers too much. So don't worry about spoilers. I want to keep it relatively fast paced, so I figure if we do 2 or 3 minutes on each movie that we're presenting, and then a little bit of back and forth talk about the movie. I did not see. I did not see this movie. It was one of my most anticipated for the month of April. This is Anna de Armas coming fresh off of a Best Actress nomination. Chris Evans, you can't go wrong with Chris Evans, the everyman. It is Captain America after all. What was it about it? Was it the writing? I mean, is it the premise of, for a guy who was hired to play Captain America and to do so, he's the good-looking all-American guy. To think that a guy that doesn't lack social skills and is that good looking would fly across the Atlantic when a girl very clearly ghosts him, is that part of the premise breakdown in the film? Trace? Can you hear me? I think you might be frozen there for a second. Either that or else I was just going on so long on the long-windedness of it all. Oh, looks like yeah. Technical issues here, folks. Sorry about that. We lost Trace, which then means that we get to see my pretty face zoomed in there. Hold on just a second, folks. That at least fixes the picture. Hopefully we'll get Trace back here in a second. I have not seen this movie. I was actually really looking forward to it. I do not have Ghosted on Apple TV. I do not have Apple TV Plus as a streaming service myself. I did, however, like the fact that the two of them. Oh, Trace is back. Welcome back.
Yeah, it looks like I had to default to my other, like the camera that's in the computer. So this is a lower quality camera. So I feel so bad.
Oh yeah, no
But
worries.
At least I'm here.
Yes, absolutely. And let me make one small adjustment real quick. Just gonna adjust you real quick there.
So basically, what I was saying before we got cut off by the internet or camera or whatever it was whoever played this character couldn't have saved this movie. It was literally just the writing of the character of Chris Evans, and the character is written this way for him to be so needy. And they even joke around about his character being needy, but it was just too much and too forceful. And it was just at points sad to watch. But there are people like his character out there. And the only redeeming thing in this movie was the cameos. I don't know if you're going to watch it, if you want me to just go ahead and tell you what they were, or if you've already heard about them.
Yeah, don't worry about spoilers. I mean, it's a movie that
Okay.
came out last month at this point.
So the only redeemable thing is the cameos. There was one by Falcon, Anthony Mackie, and there was one literally 2 minutes later by Sebastian Stan, the Winter Soldier. So all three of them are quickly in a scene together, which I definitely did not expect. And for some odd reason, Ryan Reynolds popped up at the end. But I'm assuming that happened because Chris Evans was in Free Guy, so maybe they just like swapped sets for the day. But I believe I gave this movie a 1.5 out of 5.
So what about the writing was so bad? I mean, I think with Chris Evans, we have a guy that was Captain America, the embodiment of everything America and masculineness. Is it just that it's such a hard concept to figure that someone like Chris Evans, who's that good looking and that confident, would have to go across the Atlantic Ocean to get a date after being ghosted? Like, is it just the premise that's flawed, or the writing, or
So
what apart?
maybe, okay, so they set it up that they meet each other at a farmer's market and they instantly start fighting. So not like physically fighting, but like arguing. So then that turns into flirtation and they actually end up spending the entire day together, which is cute, right? You meet someone and you quickly spend the whole day with them, not even realizing where time went. Now, the premise would have made a little bit more sense to me if maybe it was like a weekend thing. Maybe he went out with her 2 or 3 times, but literally he met her for 12 hours, spent time with her, and then just decided, okay, she's not replying to my texts. I'm just gonna go because I left a tracker on her bag by accident. I'm just gonna go see what she's up to because she's not replying to my texts. And maybe I don't know, like maybe it's because it's something I wouldn't do. I really don't know. It was just too silly of a thing to dive into. Maybe if they would have set it up that they saw each other maybe 2 times, it would have been a little bit more believable. But you said it yourself, Chris Evans playing as Captain America. Actors play other types of characters too, about him being masculine though, but there was nothing masculine about him in this role. Um, but Anna de Armas, I mean, when the action comes and she has to kick someone's butt, she definitely delivers. I'm really excited to see how she is in the Ballerina, the John Wick spinoff that comes out next summer. She's really going to be able to portray her action scenes there.
And she had a really nice little cameo in the final James Bond movie for Daniel Craig. So they all kind of appear in
Yes.
each other's movies and just, fly in for a day, do a scene, scratch their back, I'll scratch yours, sort of thing. So she was the best part of Ghosted, would you say?
Definitely by far, yes.
Nice. Let's move on to your number 4.
Okay,
This is one.
so
This is one I was looking forward to, and man, it just wasn't very good. And I wasn't expecting Shakespeare here, but when you tell me that Nicolas Cage is going to be Dracula, and then you realize, well, he's played a vampire before, but he hasn't played Dracula. How is this a miss? So I think you like this a little bit more than I did, but it's still on the lower end of both of our lists. Tell me about Renfield.
so Renfield comes in with a 2.8 out of 5, and I actually saw this back in November. So I got to see it like what, like 5 months ago, and um, I liked it as soon as I saw it. I didn't love it. Like as you can see, like if I loved it, it would have been higher on the list, but I did enjoy it. Um, Probably the biggest thing that doesn't work for me is like all the sideline stuff going on with Aquafina's character as a cop and the whole city of cops being corrupted and she's the only good one. And I mean, we even have Sonic in there. Jean Ralphio, is the character from Parks and Rec. I can't think of his actual name,
Ben
but he
Schwartz, you
plays.
mean the son of the son of of the gangster lady,
Yeah, yeah.
the
It's
voice of Sonic
Ben
from Sonic the
something.
Hedgehog.
Yeah, he voices Sonic. That's right. He It was good just seeing him actually be able to act because the last couple years we've just seen him as Sonic and we don't even see him. It's just his voice. So that was fun to have him in there. But like his character as a villain, nothing groundbreaking there. Now, the stuff that I really loved was whenever we did get Nick Cage as Dracula, he's not the main character in this movie, hence the movie's titled Renfield, not Dracula, which is fine. So when he does pop up, it's kind of like a treat because you're like, oh, okay, he's back on screen. What's he gonna do? It starts off with a really great opening, reminiscent of the 1940s Dracula movies and playing around with that. And I just think that he was just sinister and also comical as Dracula, as you would expect someone like Nick Cage. But Nicholas Hoult being in this movie as the lead, him getting his powers from eating bugs and them kind of making like a twist on that, him having a little bit of Dracula's powers, I thought that was really great. Best scene of the entire movie. I walked out and I told my roommate about this scene the first chance that I could get is when they're in the apartment complex and they're being like swatted by police and he's just going and wrecking fools and throwing people on top of cars and yeah, it was very bloody and I loved it. But there was a couple other movies in April that just surpassed it, but just a little bit.
So would you is Renfield on a go watch it list or not for you?
I would give it a thumbs up. I would say yes, check it out if you haven't seen it. It's at least fun. I mean, you're not going to get anything groundbreaking like Avatar: Way of Water or anything like that, but it doesn't need to be like that. It's just literally go in there with a couple buddies, and I think that you're going to have a great time. And from what I've heard, it seems like a lot of people did enjoy it more than not enjoy it. So,
Nice, yeah, and this is one that I was really looking forward to. This movie, I did not like it as much. I really wish that I did. But anytime you have Nicolas Cage going full Nicolas Cage, like if not everyone has like a full meter on what going the full version of themselves, and that's not always a good thing. Like Jason Bateman going full Jason Bateman isn't a good thing, but Nicolas Cage going full Nicolas Cage as Dracula, that part of the film I really did love.
yeah, you had it as a number 5 on your list, correct?
Yeah, and that's so let's flip over to my list, and that's where we get to start with me on Renfield. This is one that I was so looking forward to, and it's a comedy. It's an action comedy, but it is a comedy, and it's not one that's going to be nominated for Academy Awards. This is not a film that is trying to reinvent Shakespeare or even Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's a comedy. It is Nicolas Cage going full Nicolas Cage, and Nicholas Hoult. He's playing the leading man. He's playing the supporting character, getting his own film. It is titled Renfield after him, and man, I love everyone involved in this film, but when you have the voice of Sonic playing the spoiled douchebag gangster, I was so expecting, when you're expecting Adam Driver or someone of that ilk to play that type of character, it was miscasting from the get-go with that character. And then Aquafina. I love Aquafina. She was great as the sidekick in Shang-Chi, and sort of, in a way, playing the non-romantic leading lady, which is, I believe, the first for a Marvel movie where you have the female leading character who they're not trying to force into being a romantic interest. So the fact that it felt like they filmed everything that they filmed, and then they kind of went back and did reshoots, and they tried to force a romance there when she clearly that's not the best part of her acting ability. She's funny, she's very talented, but that sort of romantic chemistry between her character and Renfield, I didn't feel that was anything there. And the fact that she actually has a track history of being the leading female character in a film, and not having that aspect to her character, it actually surprised me that they tried to force that relationship through their characters, the editing, everything about the presentation. There are just those films where when you edit and re-edit and then re-edit again and then go get focus groups, and it was one of those films that the trailer was brilliant. You shouldn't judge a film based off of how good a trailer is, a la Suicide Squad. But this just one of those films that felt like it died in committee for me. And for me, like I have my pull up my score for this. This one it fails across the board. I gave it a 32 out of 100, or 1.5 stars. To me, this was a most definite skip, even though Nicolas Cage as Dracula was brilliant. As you said, he is a supporting character in this film, and I just wish that they would have known what they wanted to do more, rather than shooting everything that they shot and trying to fix it in post, and then realizing that there really wasn't anything that they could do to save that film. I believe. Clearly, you liked the film a lot more than I did, and maybe I was nitpicking a bit too much. But when you look at dumb comedies, which is what this is trying to be, when you have a movie like Dumb and Dumber, which is solid filmmaking from beginning to end, when you look at Dude, Where's My Car? Stuff like that, and that's, stupid comedy is a different category entirely, as opposed to the action comedy that we have here. But maybe it was me going in with my expectations and projecting my expectations onto the film, which isn't fair to the film. But it failed across the board for me.
Well, yeah, sorry to hear that. I mean,
am I wrong
film is
there?
subjective, but
am I wrong in my assessment? Like, clearly you liked the film a lot more than I
no,
did. Was I holding it to too high a standard?
no, I don't
Did I
think you
miss
were.
something?
I don't think you were. This definitely isn't one I'm going to remember in a year, and this isn't anything that's like going to warrant a sequel or anything like that. I don't think they were thinking franchise for this movie.
Oh
But
gosh.
at the end of the day, I mean, the biggest thing was if you bought in as Nicolas Cage as Dracula, I would say that was the most important thing. Even though he does play a sidelined role in comparison to the rest of the movie, I mean, if you're not buying into Nick Cage being Dracula and kind of being a silly Dracula, with the way he talks and his mannerisms and stuff like that, then the movie fails altogether. Um, all the other stuff is just kind of like extra baggage, like all the mafia stuff and the romance that you mentioned.
I will say, though, other than Nicolas Cage, my favorite part of Renfield was the support group stuff, the 12-step support group. Brandon Scott Jones from the show Ghosts, he plays Isaac on that show, the Revolutionary War hero character. He is the leader of the support group. I can't remember his character's name, but Brandon Scott Jones is the actor's name. He was pretty brilliant in a relatively small role as the support group leader. And the reason why I say I think they went back and did reshoots is he dies like halfway through, and then at the very, very end they go back and they bring back all of the support group people back to life, and as if they were going to bring them back for a sequel. So
Yeah, that's how it was back in November when I saw it as
really,
well.
really, so
Yeah.
they didn't even wow. So yeah, so Brandon Scott Jones was very talented in the role too, and he really stood out. And I think you could tell that from the trailers too, that whoever was cutting the trailers liked his performance as well. And I think he's just a very talented, young, up and coming, young-ish actor. So Brandon Scott Jones is definitely one of the better parts of the film too. Moving ahead to my number 4, this is another one that really disappointed me. Beau is Afraid. I have not seen Hereditary. I have seen Midsummer. writer-director Ari Aster has a very good reputation as an up-and-coming, talented young actor, as an auteur, if you will. And Beau is Afraid. This is Joaquin Phoenix as a guy who has agoraphobia, as someone who's afraid to leave his home, and he has tons of anxiety and going through and getting... He has a therapist and all this stuff, and he has to go on a road trip to visit his mom. And the visuals are brilliant, but my God, there's something here where it's almost a 3-hour movie, and it really shouldn't be. It is the definition of hubris and not being an auteur, just being someone that's full of himself, and this is my directorial vision. I really wish they could have done this as a streaming show, but I think part of the whole auteur thing is this is cinema. This isn't a streaming show. This is cinema, and you will watch all 3 hours of this, what should be a 6-episode streaming series. And part of the reason why I say it should be a 6-episode streaming series is the acts in this film are very cleanly divided, to where you could very easily just chop. Like, this is not a continuous viewing experience. This is very episodic as you're going through this road trip with Beau. So it really, in my opinion, should have been a 5 or 6 episode streaming series for that 3 hours of runtime. And just the hubris of all of it, it's brilliantly done. You could tell that Ari Aster is a brilliant filmmaker. He knows his way around a camera. He knows the difference between practical effects and CGI. He knows when to do them. But to have all of it boiled down to just some very stereotypical character motivations, it could have been done in at least 45 minutes less. My score for Beau is Afraid, it probably should have been lower, but this is actually the first time since I've been putting out my movies, my scorecard for this movies, I actually have negative points. Not just points out of 10, but I actually have him as having, I have negative 5 points for brevity and negative 5 points for what I called self-indulgence for the film, giving it a 60 out of 100.
Cinema.
Yeah, because it's cinema. Giving it 3 stars out of 5. It's 60 out of 100. I give 1 star for every 20 points. Technically it's brilliant, but there's just so much hubris there. He's so full of himself as an artiste with an E on the end. It's not an artist, he's an artiste with the I, with the E at the end. So, this is...
So maybe what they should have done was similar to what they did with The Hateful Eight, like 5 years after it released, is if you go on Netflix, you can watch The Hateful Eight, or you can watch the extended version that is 4 episodes. So there's like a clear ending point at each episode, and then you start the next episode. But really, it's just one long movie, but they end each episode in a way that you're like, okay, well, now I got to watch the next episode. So, like, they kind of trick you a little bit. But maybe they should have done something like that for this, is what you're saying, right?
Well, yes. But The Hateful Eight by Tarantino is brilliant. I actually saw the Roadshow version, which was even longer. I saw the Roadshow version of it in theaters, and that was brilliant. And I am someone that does like director's cuts. I love the 4-hour and 15-minute version of Dancing with Wolves, for example. And while that's generally speaking too long for one sitting, in this case, a almost 3-hour, 2-hour, and 56-minute film, I felt, as someone who loves extended cuts and director's cuts and deleted scenes and director's commentary, I was bored for a good 45 minutes of that film. So the fact that I was having too short of an attention span said loads. And you're right. Maybe the structure, if it would have been like, I think if we do get a Netflix version where it is 6 episodes, 6 half-hour episodes, the pacing would be great for that, because it is very fast paced as far as the film goes. But yeah, I agree with you that if they did 4 episodes, if they did 6 episodes, I think it fits very neatly into that format. So yeah, that would definitely be a better
This
viewing
is one I did
experience.
not see, and I don't know how the box office is about it, but one of the biggest things that turned me off, one was I didn't really get it. So it was that disconnect on top of the runtime. I saw the runtime and I was like, oh hell no. So like if I said that, like what is the general audience gonna think? Because like I mean, someone that loves movies was turned off by it, so someone like my mom would never go to see this. So I'm curious how well it did in the box office.
Well, it did not get it got a bigger release than what I thought it would, but the headlines that I was seeing on Variety, it was one of those where the headlines were still trying to convince people to go see it in theaters, but most of the word of mouth, I think, from people like people like you and me, the true cinephiles out there that like indie films and like going to the theater and having the theatrical experience. Everyone that I've been talking with has been not as high on this film after seeing it, but obviously I don't represent the full cross section of people that saw this film. But I did. I was disappointed to say the least. And then when you find out when you go see this film and you see the first 2/3, and then you finally get to see the third act of the film or the final 2 acts of the film, and you find out it just comes down to these really bad cultural stereotypes. And like I didn't even know like there's a reference in there that's a pretty major spoiler for the film. Um, anyone who does still want to go see it, I don't want to drop that spoiler there, even though I'm saying feel free to do spoilers. But I didn't even get the whole that it was a cultural stereotypes thing, and I had to go ask someone afterwards, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's the thing," but they don't really explain it in the script itself. So the fact that they're playing very heavily into cultural stereotypes, and not even ones that are well enough known out in the public, or at least for me to kind of pick up on as I'm watching the film, and I kind of had to ask some friends afterwards, like, "Is this a thing?" And they're like, "Yeah, so that's the thing." The fact that the whole thing, the overcomplication of it all, of the storytelling and the character development, it's like, really, you're doing all these moving pieces, we're moving heaven and earth visually, and it all comes down to this. That's part of why I say it's the hubris of it all. It's a little much. But, yeah, I definitely would not recommend watching Bo is Afraid.
Okay.
Sorry, go
Everything
ahead.
good? Yep. I was just switching cameras to get better quality again.
Oh, okay.
So moving on to my number 3. So from here on out, 3, 2, and 1. I really enjoyed these movies. There's really not a lot for me to say. I did not like this movie, and here's nitpicking. Like these 3 are really enjoyable, I thought. Starting off at number 3, I gave it out of 5. The Super Mario Brothers, 3.5 out of 5. I was never on the bandwagon of Chris Pratt and the voice thing, like, or even for that matter, like Charlie Day as Luigi and like everything else. I didn't really care enough, to be honest. I mean, the movie's the movie. The director and the visionaries behind it, they know more than we do. So they knew what they had on their hands. And the voice thing, they explained it very quickly. They did that funny little gag in the beginning with the commercial, and they used like the super Italian voice from like the video games, and then they switch back to like talking normal for the rest of the movie. But this movie just punched me full of nostalgia, and they kept it very simple. They didn't take any big risks. I think that Nintendo wanted to play it safe because they haven't had a good track record with movies and feature films, and I think that this movie making over $1 billion and people loving it, I think that from here on out we're going to get Zelda, Super Mario's 2, a million other Nintendo stuff. Like I think that from from the success of this movie, Nintendo's going to say, okay, let's do our own little. I don't know if they'll do a cinematic franchise, but they do got Super Smash Bros. In their pocket, so that could be fun. But I mean, this movie just it was very colorful and it was funny at times. I like what they did with Bowser and Peach and just all the other side characters. And I think the biggest thing working for this movie was the nostalgia. You have three generations of people that have played Mario. There's no way that the whole family doesn't enjoy this movie. A father with his son can enjoy this movie. And if that son has a son, I mean, everyone has played Mario Kart, you know, or if you haven't, you've played the OG Mario. So this movie really would have been hard to mess up.
And yet, when we think back to the first trailers for Sonic the Hedgehog and how poorly the art was done, the CGI design on Sonic was, they had to go back and famously redo the whole damn film in terms of Sonic's design. So the fact that this is not Pixar, this is Illumination, so this is Despicable Me, this is the Minions. Pixar or Illumination, it's a good company and it's got the Minions on its shoulders, but this is not Pixar. This is not that level of animation, and this is quite frankly an animation company that is quite a bit younger than Pixar is. It doesn't really seem like it, but they've only been around 10, 12 years at this point. So the fact that they got the art right, they got the world right, they got the animation quality and the colors so much more vibrant and better and higher quality than any other Illumination film to date, at least that I can remember. They got that part right just from the get-go. And then you're right, with the voice talent, the fact that we got the big name voice cast and that they didn't try and do more of the "it's me" kind of the over the top part of it, and yet you're right, they play into it a little bit, they write it into this joke, and then they go back to their normal speaking voices. I think either theoretically could have worked if they did it right, but I think the way they did it was the right choice for Super Mario Brothers. And yeah, it's so visually stunning. It's so well envisioned and realized on screen. And when you really see what they did visually, I was shocked at how well all of the mushrooms and all of the Super Mario Brothers stuff from the video game actually does come across with how they realized it on camera.
Illumination, I mean, you said it yourself, they've only been around like 12 years or something like that. But, I mean, Pixar and DreamWorks better watch out because Illumination knocks it out almost every time. I mean, the Despicable Me franchise, each movie makes $1 billion when it comes out, and it's like expected now. I'm not a fan of Despicable Me, to be honest. If I was to rank the Illumination movies, Despicable Me as the whole franchise would probably be at the bottom. But I'm in the minority. People love those movies. Like, love. And then, I mean, Sing. I think the Sing movies are great. I love those movies. And then you got Secret Life of Pets. That's also really good. I can't think off the top of my head any other franchises that Illumination has.
Those are the biggest ones. Those are the biggest ones, if I remember right. But I need to go back and do a full.
Yeah, Sing and Secret Life of Pets is great, and then now Super Mario Brothers. I'm really excited to see what else they crank out. I'm really excited about it.
And you're right. We got a little bit. It's almost like this was a film that was meant for CinemaCon or something along those lines, because we got the Mario Kart scene. We got the King Kong versus, or the Donkey Kong versus Mario
Donkey
stuff.
Kong, yes.
So you're right. We can the fact that we got A-list celebrities or former A-list celebrities doing all these voices, you could totally tell that all of Hollywood is abuzz with, oh, we can get in the ground floor and be an A-list or B-list actor voicing this character, doing spin-offs for the next 20 years. Because that world of Nintendo is so rich with characters and history and nostalgia that if it's done right, you can have a Donkey Kong spin-off series, you can have a Princess Peach spin-off series, you can even have a Luigi
Luigi's
spin-off
Haunted
series.
Mansion.
Yeah, with a green screen, green character, and have that being a joke in the film of Luigi being in his own film and a CGI green screen thing, so his entire costume is comped out. You can do all of that from that Illumination world, and have those A-list characters doing a very high quality IP with Nintendo as owning just a license to print money at this point with all their characters. So yeah, I would be shocked if we don't see a sequel to this in the next year or so, because you're right, $1 billion with a B. That's something that usually only Marvel does, or only the biggest of films get to be $1 billion. So the fact that it made $1 billion in like 3 weeks is amazing.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy. Moving on to my number 2 is a Ben Affleck directed film called Air. I love these types of movies where we get to learn about the history of a company or a product, stuff like The Founder with Michael Keaton. Like, I love these stories that give you just like a deeper dive into the stuff that we eat or the stuff that we wear. Later this year, we have a Pop-Tarts movie coming out with Jerry Seinfeld. And learning about the creation of the Pop-Tart. And it's like, I just think that stuff is so interesting when done right. And Air did it right. A lot of people maybe didn't like that Michael Jordan was not in it, but the movie was not about Michael Jordan. The movie was about Nike and them becoming the global brand that they are today. Because back in the 80s, when this movie takes place, they said it themselves in the beginning of the movie. They were not the top dogs. They were not number one. Adidas, Converse was over them. I don't know if they mentioned Puma, but Adidas was definitely over them, and they definitely mentioned Converse. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just so interesting about them taking these risks with Michael Jordan and literally taking all the money they had for this certain project and saying, okay, we can only spend X amount of money on like 3 or 4 players to kind of sponsor them throughout the NBA season. And Matt Damon's character was like, listen, let's take all the money and instead of spreading it out between multiple people, let's go all in on Michael Jordan, and him having to convince everybody that this was the right move with their money, and then designing a specific shoe for Michael Jordan and having to win him over because he was so against Nike, which this is all information that I would never know. I would never sit down and read the Nike Wikipedia page on my own. Like, I would never do that. And Ben Affleck, I love him as an actor, but he needs to direct more movies because he's such a good director.
Yeah, I agree. This is also on my list. I can't remember off the top of my head where I put it, but it's this is we're getting a trend now of Hollywood loves a good biopic, and we've done so many biopics, or Hollywood has done so many biopics that now we're getting biopics on consumer goods and brands, and like we just got the Tetris movie, which I have not seen, but it's been getting pretty good reviews.
We're getting a BlackBerry one too.
Yeah, and BlackBerry is coming out this next month too. And I before you
types of movies.
Yeah, and if they're done right, they're brilliant. And I didn't even know we're getting a Pop-Tarts movie. That's freaking brilliant. And if we're getting a Pop-Tarts movie at some point too, I pray that we get a Hot Pockets movie with with the guy that did the Hot Pockets routine doing the Hot Pocket stand-up routine in the film too. I like this film, and I love the Air Jordan brand and the product history and the history of Nike was something that we kind of tend to forget. Like I wear Nikes as my shoe of choice in life and in general. And it is interesting to look at the fact that this is 1984 when this is set, when Michael Jordan is coming out of college. The film takes place after the NBA draft, but before the NBA season, so it's that very narrow window of time. And the fact that Nike at this point is less than 15 years old, because this is a company that was built by Phil Knight, based around the Oregon track program. So the fact that we get a lot of that history of Phil Knight building this company out of the back of his car, based off the Oregon track program, and that when they're talking about budgets and that minuscule budget that he's getting Matt Damon for the NBA contracts, when compared to track and field, it is really interesting that it's not that Nike's going to fail, it's going to fold underneath its own weight if they fail with this, but it's a whole emerging market that no one saw up until the Air Jordan brand was created by Phil Knight and by Sonny Vaccaro, Matt Damon's character. So I think they definitely got that part of it right, the product history, because now everybody and their brother that's drafted in the top of the NBA draft gets their own shoe. That wasn't the case back then, and I think they did a really good job of establishing that it was Magic Johnson wears Converse, Larry Bird wears Converse, and that Michael Jordan himself wore Adidas back in the day. So all of that was so brilliantly done, and you're right. We really should get more movies out of Ben Affleck. I hope. I mean, this is a guy who won an Academy Award for Argo, which won an Oscar. So this is an Oscar-winning director. So the fact that he's, I don't want to say slumming it doing an Air Jordan movie, but this is a film where it's not going to hit you over the head with how awesome and how artistic, how much of an artiste Ben Affleck is as a director. But a lot of those choices with, yes, they're playing into the 80s stuff, but it's not hitting you over the head with everything. There's a Rubik's Cube, and yes, he's wearing the tracksuit and kind of looking like an Oregon gangster, if you will, where it's with the shades on the poster. but the subtlety of those decisions and not going hardcore into just making it's a 1980s film and hitting you over the head with it. I did like too. It's brilliant in its subtleness, and it's interesting too because I live in Las Vegas, so when I saw that Matt Damon, oh, they're doing a Michael Jordan, yada yada yada. It wasn't until I started researching the film itself that I realized, why have I heard that name before? Matt Damon's character, Sonny Vaccaro, is actually a real guy who's on the radio in Las Vegas. So just driving around town for the last 15 years, I've been hearing this name, Sonny Vaccaro. To me, it was just one of the local sports radio guys. I had no idea who he was in that business. So the fact that they start this entire film at a basketball tournament at Bishop Gorman High School, that is an actual high school here in Las Vegas. And it's the same high school that now is a very wealthy program. And it's for example, it's where Snoop Dogg's son transferred from LA to Las Vegas, and they did that reality show. That's Bishop Gorman. That's the one that they showed at the very beginning of the movie Air. So, yeah, I love the attention to detail to stuff that was actually happening in reality, and that's something that the best directors know how to do without hitting you over the head with it and not going, see, real life guy, Matt Damon's playing him. They know how to do it just enough and let the story tell itself, because the story is the way they're able to tell the story is so phenomenally interesting.
I believe that was your number 3, correct?
Yeah.
On your list out of 5?
Yeah. So if we switch over to my number 3, my number 3, yes, is Air, and echoing kind of what I just said. I have a score of 67 out of 100, or 3.5 stars out of 5. I love Matt Damon in this role. Matt Damon is there's a video in there somewhere where I rank all of the movies where people die trying to save Matt Damon. And I mean, trying to save Matt Damon from outer space has been the subject of 2 different sci-fi movies. We killed off Tom Hanks to save Matt Damon in a Steven Spielberg film. So Matt Damon is he's the ultimate, for whatever reason, he's the ultimate pretty boy, all-American guy. And to have him as the schlubby, middle-aged basketball promoter who's failing at his job to try and establish something at Nike, it's sort of an interesting point of view to go from for a character in a film. And to have, I know we got The Last Duel came out a year ago, and we had the reunion of Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, who hadn't been on screen together in quite a while. And they're not in a ton of scenes together in this film as much as you might think that they are, because they're on the poster together. But it was still good to see them both together, and to get just enough of Jason Bateman, like I said earlier, Jason Bateman going full Jason Bateman is hardly ever a good thing. He
was great in this movie. I think he was maybe the best part.
Yeah, and he was just enough of Jason Bateman. Like, I think of this being like Jason Bateman in Hancock. Like, he doesn't go over the top Jason Bateman. He's just right at that line of being the Jason Bateman who's not quite mansplaining, but right up against it. But he's doing all of the Jason Bateman stuff that everyone loves. He's emoting, he's there, and great supporting character, great film. Yeah, it was a film that, upon reflection, I probably might give it a little bit higher score now. But yeah, I whatever it was, 2.5 hours, I had a good time with this film, and love the. In this case, I love the biopic about the consumer goods. So always fun to see. What was your favorite part of Air?
Oh, that's a good question. It's been a little bit since I've seen. It's been a couple weeks. Probably it comes down to two different scenes. It's either going to be the part where Matt Damon goes to Michael Jordan's house without being he's not allowed. They're telling him not to go to their house, and he does anyway. And he sits down in the backyard with Viola Davis and him talking to the mom. Either that, or the scene where everyone at Nike knows that the Jordans are coming on Monday morning and they need to get a presentation ready to go, and they're all working together, and then Michael shows up with his family and they're giving the presentation. One of those two scenes, I would say, is my favorite. I would maybe need to rewatch the movie and then specifically pay attention to both of those scenes to see which one I enjoy more and listen to the dialogue.
And what, based off what you were saying there too, one of my favorite scenes, and it was the fact that we got real life spoilers for Michael Jordan's life, even though Michael Jordan as a character, he has a presence in the film, but he's not an active character for the most part. Viola Davis as Michael Jordan's mom really is the leading figure representing him in the film. And the fact that we get that this film is told looking back on this story. It's not told as being present day in the 80s, because we get a lot of actual real life spoilers when they talk about the future of Nike and the future of brands and the future of building a brand deal. The fact that we jump forward and see real images from Michael Jordan's career, and we see real images of what happened to Michael Jordan's dad in real life, and they don't dwell on it, but the fact that they had the foresight as a company and as individuals building a brand to look forward to different things and where lives can go. It's an interesting film strategy where it's a film that's spoiling the future of its own characters, and yet somehow it works. They're not overexposing it, but the fact that we get a headline of James Jordan murdered, and that leads to Michael Jordan leaving, but all of that is still ahead of them at that point, and yet they still kind of spoil the story of it. But that's a separate story in a different film, and yet they still reveal it as almost as if the entire film is prologue to a film that hasn't yet been made. So yeah, that's another brilliant thing that I loved of Ben Affleck's directing. So, moving on to my number 2 film, Super Mario Brothers. This is a film that I didn't know whether I would like it or not. I love the artwork. I was really skeptical after seeing the first Sonic trailers and then being pleasantly surprised by the redesign of Sonic. I know it's Sega versus Nintendo, but they're from that same era of when I was growing up, playing a lot of video games, spending a lot too much time playing video games, especially the original Super Mario Brothers in my case. This film it was a ton of fun. It keeps moving from the get-go. It doesn't dwell too much in any one place. Yes, it's all a giant celebration of Nintendo IP, of an intellectual property that is going to make tons of money. But what's wrong with having a good family film that isn't overly concerned with the self-torture and we must suffer for our art? It's a fun movie. It's got big celebrities. It is a printing machine for cash for earning billions of dollars. They will definitely have 2 or 3 spin-off, sequel, prequel, all kinds of different things coming out of this film. But the film itself is fun to watch. It's a visual experience to see this film. Not that it's Avatar, but it doesn't have to be. It's not 3D. It's just very colorful. It's fun. It has a little bit of you go girl empowerment with Anya Taylor-Joy doing the character of Princess Peach. Yes, all of that, but it is a lot of fun. It's not going to win any Oscars. It's not the reincarnation of Shakespeare, but it is a lot of fun, and it's not trying too hard. It is my number 2 movie. I gave it a score of 75 out of 100. Upon reflection, I might have it a little bit higher, but I gave it 75 out of 100, or just under 4 stars. I have it at 3.5 stars, so out of 5.
How many times did you see it in theater? Just once, or?
Just once so far. It's one that I don't think you need to see it twice in theaters. I think seeing it once, it's worthy of seeing in theaters because it is very visual. I do think the theatrical experience does add something to it, but it's not something that I would say, unless you have like a carload full of kids that just you need a couple hours away from the kids, send them movies, and they'll be, ooh, look at the pretty colors.
Do you think this is one that you see yourself purchasing when it comes out, or you saw it, you enjoyed it, and you're good?
This is one that I don't know if I'll purchase it for my home collection. Like I tend to collect just about everything. I have a small animation part of my collection that's actually on the shelf behind me. But this is not one that it may be one that I'll probably buy it as a Christmas present for relatives or that sort of thing. But I may go to the used Blu-ray store eventually to pick up a copy. But it's not one that I'll be sitting there opening day on a Tuesday when it comes to Best Buy and be waiting for the very first copy to come out of the store, out of the box. So yeah, it's fun. It's worth watching. It's not. Like you said earlier. This isn't one we're going to be remembering in 10 years. But I think for this generation of kids coming up, this is one that the kids may look back fondly upon, if only for the fact that it's made so much money that it's going to spur on so many sequels and spin-offs and other films that if they do this right, we'll be making billions of dollars for the next couple of years to come, for sure. So let's move on to your number one movie for the month of April 2023. Your number one movie was Evil Dead.
Yeah, my number one movie was Evil Dead Rise. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the Evil Dead franchise is my favorite of all time. Evil Dead 2 is my favorite movie of all time. This movie, Evil Dead Rise, had a lot. The bar was set so high for this movie for me because, like, the people that criticize stuff the most are usually the biggest fans. So this movie had so much that I wanted from it and that I was expecting from it. I knew Bruce Campbell wasn't going to be in it. That's fine. I got over that. But there were a lot of other things that I was looking for from my favorite franchise of all time, you know? And this is crazy because I remember going opening night to see the 2013 Evil Dead. It's been 10 years since that one. So I really hope I don't have to wait another 10 years for another Evil Dead movie. But I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 because one, I don't like doing rankings. Like I did it for you because I'm a guest on your show. But
Thank you.
if you watch any of my videos, I never rank them and I never give scores. And it's so hard. Everyone has a different variation of a 1 to 5. I think a 3 out of 5 to me is good, but another person may say 3 out of 5. Are you insane? Come on. And it's just everyone has different variations of what a 2 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 means. But if you're going to say something's a 5 out of 5, that means it's 100%. It doesn't get better. So you're putting stuff on the same level as Shawshank Redemption, Forrest Gump, Back to the Future. You're putting it on that level. Evil Dead Rise is not Shawshank Redemption. So for me to sit here and say it's a 5 out of 5, like to me, that's just like my ego is so big because I love this movie. So I love this movie. I enjoyed it. I'm gonna watch it again in theaters. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna sleep with it. But this is not a 5 out of 5. It's not Shawshank Redemption or anything like that. But that being said, there were so many Easter eggs in this movie, callbacks from other movies that I was just sitting there like I don't drink coffee, but if I did drink coffee, I can only assume that my body would just like shake if I had like 8 cups of coffee. And I'm sitting here like just shaking in the movie out of pure excitement and joy when they say certain lines or certain visuals. Like it was the most fun I've had in a movie in such a long time, and it definitely lived up and exceeded my expectations of this franchise.
Now, see, I have not seen any of the Evil Dead franchise. I find though that people that are huge movie fans seem to be huge fans of the Evil Dead franchise. So I respect the success of the franchise going back. And it's funny that you mentioned Shawshank Redemption, because now I'm picturing a smash up of a crossover of a film, sort of like Pride and Prejudice and zombies. I'm, I'm picturing all of the characters from Shawshank running from the zombies in Evil Dead Rise. I'm picturing Morgan Freeman in the voiceover booth delivering one of his great Morgan Freeman voiced baritone voice lines, and then being like, "No, get out of here!" and the zombies interrupting him in the voiceover booth. That'd be such a great crossover movie. Yeah, I've not
Did
seen.
you get a chance to see this?
I did not. No, I'm not a huge horror fan in general, but I do respect any kind of success where the franchise can live on for decades and decades, and the fact that so many big, huge film fans love this franchise in particular, and the fact that Evil Dead and Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi have become synonymous with each other, that we get Bruce Campbell as a cameo in the first Spider-Man movie when Sam Raimi directs that.
All three Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness too. He was the guy
and
selling
the Wizard of Oz movie that Sam Raimi did.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. So
like you're right. They go hand in hand with each other. Like when you watch a new Sam Raimi movie, you almost expect a cameo from Bruce Campbell.
And this is one of those films too. The Evil Dead franchise it's one of those franchises that people talk about in movies. So when you have a movie, generally speaking, about high school kids or college kids that are huge cinephiles, and they get into an argument about whether something happened in an Evil Dead movie, and that's the character, that's the virtue signaling of those characters being huge movie fans. This is one of those franchises that makes it into other films as a talking point, as something that true movie fans really know what they're talking about as characters in films. Well, we could have them talking about Evil Dead franchise. This is one of those that is so ubiquitous amongst movie fans that it can make it into other films.
So synonymous. this is a franchise that's been going on since 1981, and it still, in my opinion, is going strong because we had such a great opening with Evil Dead Rise. And I mean, even the people behind making the movie, Warner Brothers, the production company, this was supposed to be straight to streaming. It was supposed to go to HBO Max, which I was just happy that we were getting a new Evil Dead movie. So if it went to HBO Max, if it went to Amazon Prime, whatever, I was going to watch it no matter what. But they looked at the movie and said, this is great. We can't just waste it on HBO Max. Let's make some money. Let's put it out in theaters. They gave it an upgrade.
Absolutely, and because of that, I think we're all benefiting from that decision to actually make money, which is kind of weird considering HBO Max just wrote under the whole Batgirl movie just as a tax write-off. So the fact that they were able,
apparently,
yeah, the fact that they were actually able to recognize this as a potential moneymaker is a testament to them recognizing actual good movies. Let's move on to my number one and kind of wrap things up. My number one movie for the month, and this actually kind of surprised me a little bit, was Chevalier. This is not a perfect movie by any stretch, but it got the highest score out of any of my movies, so I probably would say Super Mario Brothers is a little bit better, but in terms of regular old movie standards, Chevalier, I gave it a 77 out of 100. This is the movie starring Kelvin Harrison Jr. He was the good-looking guy in the movie that came out last year with Peter Dinklage the other period piece set in France in the 1800s. He plays a real-life character in Joseph du Boulogne, the Chevalier de Saint George. I am horrible at pronouncing French names, but that's the character being portrayed in this film. It's a biopic. It's a historical biopic that takes place right before and then during the French Revolution. I don't know how historically accurate it is, but it is a very beautiful film. It's got great cinematography, great characters, great costumes, great locations. They shot this in Eastern Europe, but it really does look like they shot it in 18th century France. Not saying a lot about the conditions of the city that they were in to where a 21st century town in Eastern Europe would look like 18th century France, but still, it does look like 18th century France. They did a good job matching it there. The performances are really well done. Samara Weaving as the love interest, Lucy Boynton as Marie Antoinette. Not trying to overstay her welcome. This is truly a Joseph du Boulogne story. Kelvin Harrison Jr. does an admirable job as the character in the film. It is told from a very specific point of view, aimed at a very specific audience. But keeping that in mind, it is a story about a character that you know the name Chevalier, may not know the history behind it, but it is very well executed and a lot of fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It is a fun romp to go back and look at a historical character of a real life person that actually existed and overachieved from where you might expect him based off of demographic stuff in the reality of being in 18th century France. So all of that, it comes in at 77 out of 100, just under 4 stars. But yeah, Chevalier, I thought they did a good job with. What were your thoughts on? Did you see Chevalier?
There's one I have not seen, so I'm gonna have to just take your word for everything that you said about it. Unfortunately, yeah, that's not one that I did see. But I know that we're going to be wrapping up on time soon. But if it's okay, I just want to quickly, without giving any spoilers, talk about how good The Flash and a comedy movie called Joyride coming out is that we both got to see.
Yeah, I saw both at CinemaCon last week. Both are really good, and we're not allowed to do reviews on them, otherwise they'll revoke our press credentials or industrial credentials. But I did really enjoy both Flash and Joyride.
Well, I don't have press credentials, but The Flash, without giving any spoilers away, it was great. to me, I haven't seen Guardians 3, but The Flash is the best superhero movie since Endgame, in my opinion. And I really didn't want to like it because of the Ezra Miller stuff, but when I sat down and watched the movie, I was able to separate real life from Barry Allen, the character he was portraying. I loved this movie was just great. It was such a great and fun, enjoyable 2.5 hours of my life. That's all I'm going to say about the movie because there's so much other stuff to say, but I don't want to give anything away. I'm excited for people to watch this in June. And jumping over to Joyride, I saw Joyride back in September. So this is one that I've been sitting on for what, 8 months, and it comes out in July. I said this when I got home from the screener that night. I said it to my roommate, and I still think that 8 months later, it's true. This is the funniest movie I've seen in the last 5 years. I had such a fun time with this movie. I hope this movie succeeds. It's behind the people that brought you Neighbors, and This Is the End. It's Seth Rogen and his type of producing, and seeing these four women on screen together. Their chemistry is great. Their delivery of jokes is amazing. We have Stephanie. I don't remember her last name, but she was in she was in Everything Everywhere All at Once. She gets to let her hair down a little bit in this. And I just can't wait to see this again in July because I've been waiting as soon as the screener was over in September, I wanted to desperately watch it again.
And keeping in mind, too, this is the writer of this film is from Family Guy. This is, if you've ever seen an episode of Family Guy and you see the credits come up and it's Cherry Shiva Pravda Dumram.
Oh, the long name?
Yeah, the really long name. That's her. She's the writer of this film. The director of this film is Adele Lim. She was the writer of Crazy Rich Asians. That was a huge hit a year or two ago. So behind the scenes, too, this is it is a really talented set of people in front of and behind the camera who happen to be Asian American, but the film is not about them being Asian, which is one thing that I respect about it. As they were presenting at CinemaCon, Adele Lim she had a great line. Adele Lim opened up the presentation for Lionsgate. She said, "Representation matters, especially when you want to tell dick jokes." And this is a film that really reminds.
This is definitely a very raunchy movie.
Yeah, this is a rated R comedy. It's not about them being Asian in particular or female in particular. But it just goes to show that having a different voice, being able to tell dick jokes, is part of what the representation case is. And what this film really reminded me more than anything was The Hangover. And it's four unlikely friends going on a road trip. There's not a lost friend aspect to it like there is in The Hangover, but this is a rated R comedy that is absolutely hilarious. And it's a lot of the same material that The Hangover involves, but it's told from a slightly different perspective. But it doesn't dwell on that perspective, and it's not like, it's not using.
Did you enjoy it as much as me?
Yeah, I did. The other thing that I found fascinating too with the presentation of it was that this is CinemaCon is the studios talking to the national theater chains. So the fact that Lionsgate, which is it's not Disney, it's not Universal, it's not quite that big, but it is a big studio that has a lot of films they can talk about. The fact that this was the screener that Lionsgate was pointing to the theater owners going, this is what we want you to see. This is what we want you to put in your theaters. This is a movie that we think is going to be a huge hit. I think says volumes about the quality of what I think everyone hopes will be coming out of Joyride. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. And yeah, we haven't had a lot of great, big, huge, successful comedies in theaters the last couple of years. And you're right. If you really think about theatrical comedies the last 5 years, there's not a huge number of them. And this could probably be that next big comedic hit in theaters.
I think this could be the next Hangover, honestly. Now that you mentioned it, it's in my head that it could, because when The Hangover came out in 2009, that's all everyone talked about, because we hadn't had a good comedy like that in a while. So I think that this is going to be like the next big comedy that everyone's just going to talk about and tell their friends, hey, you got to go see this.
And the fact that the two big screenings of CinemaCon would be the Flash big tentpole superhero film and Joyride. I think that says loads about what the business thinks about Joyride's success level will be. The fact that it's getting a July 7th, 8th, right after 4th of July release. So yeah, I really love both those films. Fingers crossed they will do well. So, Trace, thank you for joining me. Want to get you out of here on time, so thank you for coming on, Dragon Movie Guy, and I will say goodbye to our audience. And thank you for coming on, and watch again next time. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.